Good morning. And in New York City, and I'm looking to my left, I can see Lincoln Center. And it's a beautiful day in New York City. We don't get the remnants of Ian until tomorrow. And then we're slated to have a solid day of rain. What that'll be, I have no idea. We can only hope that the region is spared, unlike Florida. And we don't know what will happen in South Carolina. One thing we do know, and we can talk about when we speak about politics, is we can talk about aspirational yearnings. That means you can wish something was true. It may not be. Putin is finding that out right now. He's aspirational. He's just come out and said he's adopting those 4 territories within the Ukraine. Find them hard to pronounce, one or two of them. I know Lufthansa, and I hope I've said it right. They're fighting back right there, right now. Ukrainians have surrounded 5,500 soldiers. And in Kherson, there's been fighting there all along. So, little by little, the Ukrainian counteroffensive is whittling away at the territory that Putin seized in the beginning of this year. Sending new recruits in just means they're going to be surrounded by Ukrainian forces. So far, we don't see any atrocities on the Ukrainian side, but we certainly do on Russia's side. Shame on them for launching a SAM-300 missile at a convoy of cars known to be right at the checkpoints to give humanitarian aid to folks in one of the provinces. So he murdered 28 that we know of, and 50 others are injured. Shame, shame for this person who has gone on aspiration and wishes to conquer another sovereign nation just because he'd like to. Maybe he thought, like Trump, that Trump was still in power and the 2020 election had never occurred, or if it did, Trump won, just like social media is proclaiming. 8-1. There's no Joe Biden in the White House. Donald Trump. Well, with Donald Trump, he might have gotten 20% of Ukraine. Unfortunately, those lies are just that, lies. Donald Trump lost the election fair and square. You'd never know it on social media because Donald Trump doesn't concede that he lost the election. And many posts who espouse misinformation on the 2020 election and also promulgate lies on the 2020 election, they force folks to view that information 8 times more often than the truth. Luckily, social media is being called out too. We're actually looking into social media. NYU is investigating social media platforms and their data. Columbia University is looking at social media and its data. The Washington Post is, the New York Times is reporting. So if you go, The Guardian is reporting, if you go to legitimate sources of information, you'll see the truth. You'll get the facts that these were aspirations, something that Putin wished for and Donald Trump wished for. And in the real world, they didn't come true. Not at all. And with enough weapons, it looks like the national spirit in Ukraine is launching a massive counteroffensive, one that will take them through October into November when the snows hit. What happens after that? It's anyone's guess. But if the world was listening and the world cares about people and climate change, you know what? They'd sit down with Putin and everyone else, and they'd come to a ceasefire and a withdrawal. This war in Ukraine is absolutely damaging to our environment. Most likely, it's going to be found that one of the largest methane gas leaks in the Nord Stream pipelines probably occurred because of Putin's sabotage. And we really don't need more methane or carbon emissions in our atmosphere. As Hurricane Ian showed us, there is indeed global warming. There is a negative feedback loop that is making the hurricanes larger and more powerful every year. And this was predicted. This was predicted in the early 70s. Also in the early 70s was a Powell memorandum that predicted the rise of the GOP to be more conservative, but not as conservative and alt-right as it's become. Yes, they were aspirational. They've taken over a lot of the newspapers. They've taken over a lot of the social media spaces. And they've taken over a lot of the governorships of our country. And no longer are they just claiming it's market forces at work. No, the legitimate agenda of these people, of the governors in all the 32 states, is the promotion of fossil fuels. 30 years of planning to get to the absolute promotion of fossil fuels. Well, that too is aspirational. You should have left it alone after about 20, when people couldn't see with their eyes and feel with their hearts and minds and bodies the devastation of climate change. You can call it what you wish, and Lord knows, Ron DeSantis in Florida, he wasn't having anything to do with climate change after the first 2 years in office. He totally reversed his stance. He supported cracking down on the EPA. However, when Ian hit, he's the first one to call a national disaster and ask for FEMA money. And I wonder, folks, why should taxpayers be on the hook 100% for Florida or all the other states that are going to be devastated by carbon emissions and a negative feedback environmental loop that is affecting the entire globe? Our oceans are acidifying. The Arctic is warming and acidifying. Look what happened in Pakistan with all their floods. I think it's time to start suing the fossil fuel companies. They knew 50 years ago what their industry was going to cause in terms of environmental devastation. They knew, and they covered it up, and they denied the science. Well, you can't deny it anymore. It's upon us. We see the effects of global warming. We see surges in our oceans, 6, 8 feet. You look at the pictures of Florida with the boats that are unmoored from the marinas, and that the level of water has gone up 8, 16 feet. That's a lot of devastation. It's a lot of denial if you can look around and not weep for the people who are left stranded in these homes. And we don't know what the extent of the damage is yet. So, why perpetuate denial of what we can see with our eyes? Why limit our rights? We've moved beyond the 60s when people were protesting for civil rights and for the rights of the LGBTQ societies. These are not the issues the GOP should be concentrating on. They should form a society with all of us, and instead they are persisting on denying people the right to vote so that they can control the states. They want to control forever and get paid by the fossil fuel industry. Well, I think that what you've done, yes, you've planned for 30 years, but that too is aspirational. People like their rights. And friends like mine in North Carolina are going to have a podcast called Education Unmasked. And she's linking all the voter registration sites in the state of North Carolina, telling people where to go to vote, what pieces of identification you need, what are the dates, where are your polling places. She is giving out as much information as possible. Her podcast is Education Unmasked, with links to polling data all over the state of North Carolina. And she's like many others. I told you last week at the end of our dinner, all the women sat down and wrote cards to register people to vote in Georgia. We didn't know what party they belonged to. We just knew that they needed to know their polling data, and we wanted to give them the polling data that they needed and the advice they needed so they could take the ID with them that's required. Well, like Putin, like Trump, this new GOP, they're on the wrong side of history. They're trying to suppress voters when we've moved beyond that. People know they have rights, and people are exercising those rights. In small South American countries, they're already suing the fossil fuel industry. It's only a matter of time before they do it here in America. Oh, and what other great thing is this new GOP doing? They're trying to get an injunction against the student loan debt. They've got a judge that will say that what Biden did to alleviate $20,000 in student loans for people who are so poor that they need Pell Grants, they want to go against the poor. They also want to go against the middle class, who gets only $10,000 removed from their loans. I never ceases to amaze me how low people can go. It's not enough to have voter suppression, but now we know, hey, you've overstepped. There's a lot of light being shined on social media and disinformation and misinformation. There's a lot of light being shined on voter suppression and organizations countering that suppression. There's a lot of light being shined on every community that's being marginalized, and amicus briefs will protect them. So I think, after 30 years of planning for this great takeover, I'm hopeful it's not going to succeed. I'm hopeful also Donald Trump's not going to succeed. After all, his best bud, Deripaska, has just been sanctioned. I was wondering when that was going to happen because he was so instrumental in helping Trump win the 2016 election. And I'm hopeful also that Putin, if he doesn't see the light, somehow or other, he's going to be made to see the light and withdraw from the Ukraine. The world doesn't need another Hitler. The world needs to come together in peace to solve all of our problems, because we don't have to complete the Malthusian theory of war, pestilence, and famine. We got to get rid of the pestilence. We got to get rid of the famine. And we got a world that we have to save from itself. Not itself, really. The world doesn't do anything. It just exists and provides us with the best life it knew how. And what are we doing in return? We're destroying the earth. And if you believe in God, that's God's gift to man. If we believe in God, we've got to be stewards of our property. So that's the message, everyone. Can't be aspirational. You got to be a doer. You got to be a doer like my friend Kim in North Carolina with her new podcast, Education Unmasked. Got to be a doer and get out there, register, vote, and take friends. Got to be a doer. Look for the facts, folks. Don't rely on social media. It just perpetuates the misinformation and the disinformation until we get regulation that curbs it. No, sirree. It's not the marketplace dictating what we're seeing. And also, we're probably not intensely inflated that we need to have the Fed keep hiking. What we need is corporate control and reining in of corporate usurious pricing. So there's a lot that's happening, a lot that's known, and a lot, I think, we can overcome. No nihilist here. Not a bloody optimist either, because I know it takes hard work. But I know we can do it. We can get to the good life. God bless you, and see you next week. You can bet on it.